Hey guys, we're going to talk about the Axis powers advancing across Europe. So, September 1st, 1939. What was it that happened then? Yes, Germany and the Soviet Union is this whole area here, attacked Poland. They went Germany from the west, Stalin from the east, and within a month, Poland had collapsed. Now, some members of the Polish government had fled elsewhere and were running like the Polish government in exile. But the government that's there now is Stalin took half. This is all Stalin's, and Hitler took this half, and Hitler runs all this. Poland is gone. Okay. And for the rest of the winter, Hitler didn't do anything. Stalin went up here. Oops, my map is a little off. Sorry. Europe map. I'm sorry, this is taking. What's going on? This is Givens. Europe map. I hope you guys appreciate my mess ups sometimes. Okay, so Stalin went up here to the Baltics. These countries are called the Baltics, B-A-L-T-I-C-S, Baltics. Stalin from here went up here to the Baltics and made them all agree to allow him to have army posts there. But Hitler mostly just kind of chilled out the rest of the summer. You know, it's war. He wasn't really chilling out, but he didn't really do anything else the rest of the winter until April. In April, here's Germany. Let me draw a little line. This is France, of course. There was a line right here called the Maginot Line. Go back to it's called the Maginot Line. And it's where British and French forces built this really, really strong wall. They built a wall right here that they thought would keep Germany out. There's this tiny little part. Let me change colors. It's a tiny, tiny little part right here that still goes between Germany and France. Oh, my line disappeared. Sorry, little line right there between Germany and France. And nobody thought anyone could get through there. It was really, really thick forest. But what do you think happened? Hitler sent his troops through the forest. They avoided the Maginot Line, went through the forest, and invaded France. He conquered Norway, Denmark, Netherlands, and Belgium. Norway is a little bit up here above my map. He got all this land. Hitler did. And then, I don't know why my line keeps disappearing. Sorry. He got all this land, and then his troops crossed through this forest and into France. The Nazis poured into France. It was awful. There were thousands and thousands and thousands of Nazi soldiers coming in. And a bunch of soldiers up here, French soldiers, got trapped. French and British soldiers got trapped here. And it was the Battle of Dunkirk. Let me write that down for you. Dunkirk. This is one of the really famous battles of World War II. And there was a rescue where all the ships that were in the water here, whether they were pleasure cruises, whether they were fishing boats, whether they were army boats, anything, the British government ordered all available boats to go to this, where am I? Go to this beach right here and rescue the British troops. And they rescued over 200,000 British troops. 200,000 British troops were rescued from the onslaught of the French that were coming in and brought back to England. And when they were brought back to England, there was this big boost of morale in England. Everybody was feeling good, feeling better because they had saved 200,000 people. But Hitler's troops went to Paris, and France was completely overwhelmed, demoralized. They were not expecting this at all. They were not prepared to fight off the Nazis, and they gave in. And France was taken over by the Nazis. Then they did something that was so childish, but so real. On June 22nd of 1940, Hitler made the French government go into the same train car that that Germany had to go into at the end of World War I. Do you remember when Germany had to sign an armistice saying that they were done fighting World War I, and everybody was embarrassed and upset about it? Well, the place where they had signed that armistice was in a train car. Well, on June 20th, 1940, Hitler made the leader of France go into that exact same train car to sign over his surrender to the Nazis. Following the surrender, the Germans, following the surrender of France, the Germans set up a puppet state in a town in the south of France called Vichy. It's not English, so it doesn't say ch, ch, ch. It says shh, Vichy. No E, Vichy. So it was all run by Germans. It was all run by Hitler's Nazis. But it was officially, technically, it was the French government. So if you ever just try to kind of remember this, if you ever hear someone talk to you about the Vichy government, well, the Vichy government was the German puppet state that ran France during World War II, after Germany had conquered France. And just like what happened in Poland, many of the government officials of France escaped, and they went to England and set up a puppet, not a puppet, set up a government in exile. So the actual elected government leaders of France went to England to hold all of their business meetings, and they claimed that they were still the official government of France, even though they were in exile and now living in England. And the guy that led the French government living in exile in England, his name was Charles de Gaulle. If you ever happen to fly through the Paris airport is the Charles de Gaulle airport. And that's why it's called the Paris de Gaulle airport. It's named after him. Let me go back to my map. Okay, so Germany has conquered France. The government leaders of France fled and came over here to England. So now they're all living in England, and they still claim that they are the official government rulers of France. But they're over here because the Nazis have taken over France. And the Nazis have set up a bogus puppet state that they say is the official government of France down here in the south in a town called Vichy. Okay, now Germany, now Hitler has set his eyes on England. He's conquered France. He's conquered all these smaller countries here. Here's Norway. I told you he had conquered Norway, Denmark, Netherlands, Belgium, France. He's kind of taken over all of Western Europe. So, and this whole time, remember, there's a civil war going on down here in Spain. So now Hitler has his eyes on England, and he begins Operation Sea Lion. Why is it called Operation Sea Lion? I have no idea. It's a kind of silly name to me, but Hitler was an interesting fellow. Operation Sea Lion. And with Operation Sea Lion, Hitler just wanted to destroy England. He was bombing it left and right, all over. He was bombing England. There was a new prime minister in England. The guy we talked about before was Neville Chamberlain. Now we've got Winston Churchill. Oops. And Winston Churchill is 100% dedicated to never giving in to the Nazis. No matter what, he is not going to surrender. So the British just kept fighting and fighting and fighting and fighting. No matter how hard the Germans came at them, the British just kept fighting. And let's see, beginning on September 7th, 1940, for 57 nights in a row, Nazis bombed London, the capital of England. Here we are, London, right here. This is just one city, and it's quite a bit smaller than Almaty. So imagine someone bombing, like airplanes going over and bombs dropping over Almaty every single night for 57 nights. This tactic was called the Blitzkrieg. Blitzkrieg. In German, it means lightning war. It's a really important word, blitzkrieg. Blitzkrieg, 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 blitzkrieg. Remember blitzkrieg. It means lightning war. And even though thousands of people, thousands of civilians, people just like you and me, we're not soldiers. I'm not a soldier. I will never be a soldier. Thousands and thousands and thousands of us were killed. They were just dropping bombs anywhere, homes, schools, churches, anything. They didn't care. They just wanted to destroy London. Throughout all of this, for 57 days, Winston Churchill still refused to give in. The British people had this incredible, I don't know, will to live and will to continue. Even the king and queen of England didn't flee the city. You know, they all rich people, they have their palace in the city, and then they have their fancy countryside home. They could have left. They could have gone out to the countryside to their home, but even they stayed to support the city. All the way until 1941, the Germans continued to just randomly sometimes bomb a city. It was a real fear tactic for them. They were trying to make the people afraid of them and make the people give in. So then, also, while that was happening, the Axis powers came down here to Africa. In 1940, I'm not writing this down, I hope you're writing it down. In 1940, Mussolini sent troops into Libya and Egypt. I don't know quite how much you know about Africa, but these were British colonies. So Mussolini was directly attacking Britain when he came in here. And the British pushed back. They were pushing them out, going, I can't write on this map, but they were going from Egypt to Libya and pushing. And then Hitler sent a really, really good army commander to help out Mussolini's people. Sent a whole bunch of soldiers with a good commander. And that commander's, or general, not commander, General Erwin Rommel, and his nickname was the Desert Fox. That's what everybody called him, was the Desert Fox. And because I'm writing desert, I'm going to give you a pause for just a second and give you an English language lesson. Lots of people get confused on how to spell dessert, and how to spell desert. I always remember it this way. One of my teachers taught me once upon a time, dessert has 2 S's, and I always want 2 of them. I always want 2 desserts, right? You get 1 dessert, you want another dessert. So you can remember that dessert has 2 S's and desert only has 1 S. Okay, back to World War II. Hitler sent a really, really strong, powerful general from his Nazi army and soldiers with him to Africa to help Mussolini. Between 1941 and 1942, the Desert Fox had Britain pushed all the way back to Cairo. Let me open the map up again. Let's go into details. Okay, so Egypt and Libya are British colonies. Mussolini has invaded, and Mussolini brings his soldiers down here, and the British fight them off, and they're pushing them out, pushing them out, pushing them out. But then Hitler sends the Desert Fox down to help Mussolini, and now they start pushing the British soldiers back, and they've got them all the way back here to Cairo. So now the Germans have taken over all this land, and the British soldiers are here like cowering, probably not cowering, probably fighting as hard as they can, but they keep having to retreat because the Mussolini and Hitler have them pushed back. And then in 1940, October of 1940, Mussolini attacks Greece. October 1940, Mussolini attacks Greece. Greece and Yugoslavia, which doesn't even exist as a country anymore, but it's up here. Yugoslavia and Greece both fall to the Axis powers. And then Hungary and Bulgaria both just join. You know, they don't want to be attacked. They join. So now, let me see if I can erase all this stuff so I can show you guys something. Okay, so now we've got Nazi. I'm just going to color it all in red. Nazi. All right, instead of saying Nazi, I should say Axis. So Axis. Well, half of Poland is Axis and half of it is communist. Axis. All of this. Let's get a little more. Look at that. All of that is controlled by the Axis powers. It's not looking very good for Europe. All of this is controlled by Hitler and Mussolini. Plus, you've got down here, now they've got all of this in North Africa. It's looking pretty rough. In 1941, Hitler, June of 1941, Hitler breaks pact with Stalin and invades the Soviet Union. Stalin was not prepared for that at all. He was shocked. They had a pact. But Hitler's like, hey, there are a whole bunch of natural resources that I could use in the Soviet Union. Hitler was trying to take over all of Europe. And let's look at that map again. He's getting there. So Hitler comes in here and comes all the way over. My map is not big enough, but he makes it almost all the way to Moscow. Yeah, remember, Stalin had done all of his great purge. So many of his army leaders were dead. So his army was scrambling to defend the Soviet Union from this complete shock of an attack. The Germans pushed their way all the way through all of this. Oops, let me get my pen going. Pushed their way through all of this and were making it almost to Moscow. But when they got close, do you guys remember what happened when Napoleon attacked Russia? When Napoleon attacked Russia in 1812, what was it that stopped him? Hopefully you remember it was the winter. His British forces were not prepared for Russian winters. Well, had Hitler only studied his history, he would have known that, because now in 1941, the exact same thing has stopped his forces. Let's see how many it was. Thousands of Nazi soldiers froze to death. It was bad. Thousands of them froze to death. They were just kind of trapped in this cold weather. They didn't have coats, not for that kind of weather. And it was bad. Finally, they made it to Leningrad in September and started a 2.5-year siege. So they attacked Leningrad. This is a city, Leningrad. They attacked Leningrad for 2.5 years. Food in Soviet Leningrad became so scarce that rations were down to 2 slices of bread per day. That's all you were allowed to eat. I'm not talking about the soldiers. I'm talking about the civilians, us, you, me, your mom, your dad, your brothers, your sisters, your friends. People were only allowed to eat 2 slices of bread a day. Nothing else. It wasn't like 2 slices of bread and a steak, 2 slices of bread and an apple. Nothing. All they were eating was 2 slices of bread. And the people were so desperate and so starving that they were literally peeling wallpaper off the walls, boiling it and eating it, because there was this rumor that had spread all around Leningrad that potato starch was used in the glue to put wallpaper up. I don't know if you guys even know what wallpaper is. It's not very popular these days, but it's a pretty paper that you put to make the wall look nice. You put a glue on the wallpaper, and then you glue it up against the wall so that it makes your wall look pretty. And there was this rumor that the glue was made of potato starch. And so the people were so starving. They were ripping wallpaper down off their walls, boiling it, like making it into a soup and eating wallpaper. And Stalin begged Winston Churchill of England to please open up a Western front for the war. So the Nazis, so it wouldn't be all the Nazi soldiers going into Russia. They, I mean, into Moscow, into the Soviet Union. He would split it because for now, let's go back to my map. Right now, all of the Nazi soldiers are over here towards the Soviet Union. And let me go to a better map. Okay. All the Nazi soldiers, almost all of them, except the ones that are down here fighting, all of Hitler's soldiers are over here. Here's Moscow, over here. And Stalin is begging Winston Churchill to open up a fighting front over here. So Hitler would have to spread his soldiers out. But Churchill doesn't do it, but does agree to help. And I'm finished.